Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing? Great, great. Well, I'm really grateful to all of you for being here for our last What Matters to Me and Why of the semester. It's been a great semester so far, and we're going to announce our lineup for next semester soon. If any of you want to grab some lunch, please feel free to grab some. And there's plenty of seats up here, so for those of you who've just come in, please come grab a seat here. You know, there's a lot to be thankful for during this Thanksgiving week, and I'm so grateful for this series, which is in its 13th year and has achieved really quite a success here on our campus and has been emulated on university campuses around the country. I think it's because this event is student-run and student-produced. The students choose the speakers, they produce the event, and they introduce the speakers. And before I introduce our former student who will introduce our speaker, I just want to invite everyone to a Hanukkah celebration today at Tommy Trojan at 4 p.m. It's called Fire on Ice. It's a theme celebration. You know, Hanukkah doesn't always fall in the academic year, but it does this year. So whenever it does, we're really take the opportunity to celebrate as a Trojan family. Everyone's invited, Jewish and non-Jewish alike. We'll light the menorah. The provost will offer remarks. You'll get some latkes, which should be nice. The Trojan marching band will be there. So please feel free to join us at 4 p.m. At Tommy Trojan today to light the menorah and celebrate Hanukkah. And today, I'm really kind of honored to be able to introduce the student who will introduce our speaker because I've known him for many years. He's my colleague at the Office of Religious Life, but he also got his master's degree right here at the Annenberg School and was mentored by Andrea, our speaker today. And I've really admired this student in his journey. He grew up right here in South Los Angeles. He's the first man in his family to get a graduate degree. He was a former NFL player with the Seattle Seahawks, and now he works with me, so that's quite a demotion for him, unfortunately, but anyway, I'm happy for it. So please join me in giving a warm Trojan welcome to Timothy Conley.
Thank you, Dean Sony. I wouldn't call this working with you a demotion, but that's funny. You know, I have no stage fright speaking, but I'm as nervous as heck right now. I've been speaking in front of audiences since I was 5 years old, starting in my church Sunday school. The downstairs Sunday school had to give lessons to the upstairs about what we were learning. They wanted to make sure we were learning something. But today I am a little nervous, but I'm going to get through this. And I think I'm nervous because I want to do this right. You know, I came to USC as staff, and I had a dream of going to Annenberg and earning a master's degree at Annenberg. And the first time I applied, wasn't so successful, but I'm stubborn. And I'm a former athlete. In sports, they always teach us that there's more than one road to get to where you want to be. Or as my coach would say, one bad monkey doesn't stop a show. That's an old Southern saying. And I went at it full force like I did with my athletic pursuits. And through the blessing of being staff here, I was able to take a class before I was admitted into the program with Dr. Andrea Hollingshead here, and her class was amazing. I learned so much, and I felt out of place at first. Everybody had these things called laptops, and I had been out of school for a while, and when I was in school, everybody was writing with a pen and a notepad, so I had to do a little bit of adjusting, and her class was just amazing. All the students were great. We did a lot of great things in there, learned a lot about the different generations and in the workforce and many other things and different leadership models, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important thing that Dr. Hollingshead did for me was she gave a young man who was lacking confidence some confidence not to give up. And I was ready to give up on trying to become an admitted student into the program. And she was like a football coach for me. She put some fire under me, and I applied again, and I didn't give up. And she wrote an amazing letter of recommendation for me, and I'm blessed to know her, blessed to have her as a mentor, and I'm so happy and excited to hear what she's going to share with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up now, and Dr. Andrea Hollingshead.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you, Tim, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for inviting me, Dean Soni, for sharing what matters to me. And, you know, I'm honored. I'm so honored, and I'm humbled to join the amazing list of accomplished and inspiring speakers in the What Matters to Me series over the years. But, you know, before I talk about what matters to me, I'd like to share something about Tim. Sorry, Tim. You know, I've been teaching for over 20 years, and, you know, I've had hundreds of students. And all the students are special to me, but some are super special, and Tim's one of them. So let me share a couple of reasons, you know, why Tim is so special, and why I'll always remember you, Tim. Is he's the only student who ever came to meet with me before the semester started. And I remember that meeting very well. So it was a week before the semester, and Tim, you know, told me that he wanted to introduce himself to me. He told me that he was an athlete, that he had been injured, that he had worked in a career, and that he wanted to change his career and he wanted to go back to school. And he also told me how committed he was, how motivated he was, how hard he was going to work to earn his master's degree in communication management. And he told me that he was going to do what it takes to get an A. And as a professor, you know, you always say what matters is your learning, not whether, you know, what the grade is. But, you know, Tim said yes. Dr. Hollingshead, yes, yes, yes. I, you know, care a lot about earning, but I'm still going to get an A. So anyway, fast forward a couple of weeks, and in my groups class, the students are assigned into groups the second week of the semester, and they work in those groups through the entire semester. And Tim's group, and I also have the students, you know, kind of develop a group name for themselves. So Tim's group was the A team. And it was kind of funny because they, you know, were committed to A's. And I also made a mistake in revealing something about myself that I probably shouldn't have revealed. And that is that I had a childhood crush on Mr. T in the original A team. You know, so the A team had special meaning. So suffice it to say, Tim and his teammates worked over the course of the semester. They did fabulously. They earned A's, and then at the end of the semester, Tim presented me with a Mr. T mug. So those of you who don't know who Mr. T is, he's right here on this mug. And you can see that this mug has been very loved. You know, it's wearing off. I use it every day, and so I think of you every day, Tim. Now, the funny thing is, you know, so my dream was meeting Mr. T, and finally, 2 years later, I met Mr. T on an airplane. And, you know, I was almost speechless, and it took me the whole plane ride to get up the courage to talk to Mr. T, and I finally did, and I asked him for a photo. And guess who the first person I sent that photo to? Tim. So anyway, so what matters to me? Relationships with students like Tim and some of my other graduate students who are here today. Thanks for coming. Relationships with my wonderful husband, who's here somewhere. Relationships with my family, my colleagues, my community. And, you know, all that I have, you know, achieved in my life is because of the love, the support, and the knowledge that I've gained from other people. So I'm very appreciative of that. My career also matters to me. I love being a professor, and I love being part of this community for reasons like this. This kind of forum is just amazing. And of course, my health matters to me. And you know, I'm getting older, and one of the things that I realize is if I'm tired, if I'm hungry, if I'm sick, if I'm injured, I just can't devote the resources I need to other things. So, you know, I try to take very good care of myself. What also matters to me are experiences. And every interaction, every situation, every experience no matter how mundane, is an opportunity to learn or to share or to give something to someone else. And I found that some of the most profound moments in my life have occurred when I've least expected them. So for example, one of my passions is scuba diving, and I've seen wonderful, amazing things underwater. My husband and I have logged over 600 dives together, and we've been diving for more than 20 years. And, I've seen beautiful fish and coral, schooling hammerheads in the Galapagos, whale sharks, everything. And so, when you're scuba diving, those of you who scuba dive, how many of you are scuba divers? So some of you are. And one of the things, not that many, and you should really do it. So, one of the things, though, is that you feel like a very privileged observer, sort of a voyeur in some respects, observing what's happening in another world. And, one of my most profound, experiences that occurred underwater wasn't when I was on scuba. It was when I was swimming. And actually, it happened last year when I was on sabbatical in Bonaire, an island in the Caribbean known for its shore scuba diving. And my husband and I had rented a shack where we read and wrote for most of the day, and we would go swimming. I would go swimming in the evening, and I'd wear my mask and snorkel while I swam, and so I could see the underwater life. And one day, after I had finished swimming and I was coming to the shore, little did I know, but there was this huge eagle ray, 8 feet across, that was feeding, and it was coming at an angle where neither one of us could see each other. So we're coming in, I'm swimming, I'm like in 4 feet of water, here comes the eagle ray feeding, where neither one of us are paying attention, and when we got to about 2 feet from each other, literally it was right here, we saw each other at the same time and did, a jerk like this. We were both surprised. Then we looked at each other, and we both kind of checked each other out, and I kind of felt like the eagle ray had the same emotion at the same time. It was, oh, it's just you. So, it was interesting because usually these creatures just take off and go, but it didn't go. It just continued feeding, and I kind of continued watching it for a few minutes, and it did its own thing. So, so I shared an emotion with an eagle ray, and I had never felt that kind of connection before. And so do eagle rays experience emotion? Yes, they definitely experience surprise. So one of the things that Tim mentioned is that I'm a professor at the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, and one of the first things that you learn in our introductory public speaking class is to adapt your presentation to your audience. So I'd like to talk about some mundane but pivotal experiences at a very important time in my life where I learned the most about myself and the importance of groups in my own success, my first job out of college. Many of you are students and will be in your first jobs, and it's when you take the knowledge you gained in college about the subject matter and about people that you learn in college, and you put it into practice. And one of the things I learned in my first job is that it's not easy to do this. So I'd like to give you a little background about me before I talk about my first job. I'm the oldest of 5 children. I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Is anybody else from Chicago? Yeah. All right. So are you a big Chicago sports fan? Absolutely. That's something. We have our Bulls and then the Bears, and we always relive, even though, it happened in the last century, our victories, we always relive them for years. So, my parents moved to Evanston after I was born because they wanted the great school system, and they also liked the diversity of the community of Evanston. And education was the most important thing in my family, and my family sacrificed a lot. My parents sacrificed a lot, including their retirement savings, so that all 5 of us could go to college. My siblings and I competed for everything. There wasn't a lot of money in the house, so we competed for our parents' attention. We competed for food at the dining table, and we also competed for time in the bathroom in the morning. We only had one bathroom, and it was the only room with a lock in it. So suffice it to say, I grew up not liking groups very much. So other words to describe me growing up were smart, determined, but pretty clueless. This is a really embarrassing example, and I don't know why I'm describing it. Sometimes that happens, as it did with Mr. T earlier. Sometimes I say things that maybe I shouldn't. But I'll tell you it anyway. At the end of my freshman year in high school, I met with my guidance counselor, and I had done really well. I had gotten straight A's, and she asked me where I planned to go for college. And I said, I want to go to school on the Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast, yes, I said Ivory Coast. And she said, Andrea, that's very interesting. I've never met anybody who wanted to go to school in Africa before. And I said, oh, no, not Africa. I wanted to go to Yale or Harvard or Princeton. And she started laughing and said, oh, you mean the Ivy League, not the Ivory Coast. So, of course, I was so embarrassed. So embarrassed. But the ironic thing is, this is what's so funny, is I ended up at Yale University. And part of it was like I was determined to make up for this kind of embarrassing moment. So I think of Yale as the USC of the East Coast. So anyway, at Yale, I was a psychology major, and I majored in social psychology, which investigates how people think about and behave in different social situations. And two concepts that I learned that, really were important to me as I moved into my first job were perspective taking and framing. And these are very simple but powerful concepts. So perspective taking means looking at situations not just from your own vantage point, but also from the other people who are involved in the situation. Before you actually take action. So you're thinking about it from multiple perspectives before you take action. And framing is the idea that you can take information and construct a frame that presents that information either as a positive or as a negative. So, the classic example is if you have, water in a glass that goes to the midway point, you can either present it as half full or half empty, and depending on whether you present it as half full or half empty has an impact on how people perceive it. And I'll come back to these concepts later. So after college, I graduated from, I had a degree from Yale in psychology, and I moved back to my parents' home in Chicago, and I had no job and no money. It was the mid-1980s, and the country was in a recession, and it was a very, very tight job market. But, I needed a job, and I had to start paying off my student loans. So I was thinking, what can I do with a psychology major? And then I thought, advertising. Because psychologists study persuasion and social influence, and, advertising is about persuading people to buy stuff, so it fits perfectly. But, I wasn't very creative artistically, and so I did know about research, and so I sent my resume to all the large agencies in Chicago that had research departments. And, I got one bite only, and I had one shot at a job. So this is where my lessons learned from my first job start. So I was very excited. So I had my interview. It was in a big advertising agency in downtown Chicago at the Amico building, which is 80 stories. It's I think, the fourth largest building in Chicago. It's now called the Aon building. And my agency represented Amico, was one of the clients, and my interview was on the 76th floor. So I was really, really impressed. And I was feeling good. I was wearing my blue baggy suit with the big shoulder pads and a double string of fake pearls, and I was ready for anything. And you know what? I'm glad there were no pictures of me in this suit. So my interviewer's name was J.D., and he was a director of one of two groups in the research department. After a little small talk, where I learned he had a PhD in psychology, he began the interview. And, his first question was the question that I hoped I would never get, and the one I dreaded most. And this is what he said. So, Andrea, you just graduated from college, and you have no work experience in advertising. Why should I hire you? Oh, yikes. I thought about, wow, what do I say to that? And then I thought about this idea of framing. And, could I frame my lack of experience as a positive? And I realized, I had nothing to lose, and something just popped in my head, and I went for it. And I told JD, you should hire me because I'm a blank slate. I don't have any preconceived notions about how to do things. I know some statistics, and I'm smart, and I'll learn. You can train me how you want to get things done. And then I sat and smiled. And you know what? I got the job. Believe it or not, I competed against a number of other people. I got the job. However, thinking about this blank slate thing, it came back to haunt me because whenever JD and I had a disagreement, he would always say, Andrea, I thought you were a blank slate. So, any experience or even a lack of experience can be framed as a positive, but figuring out the right frame is, what's important. So anyway, so my first day at the office, and I had my first challenge within the first 2 minutes of getting off the elevator, where I met my secretary. And we had our group had a shared secretary. And, I came in, and I was happy, excited to be at my job, and I said, hi, my name's Andrea, and I'm really excited to be here. And she looked at me and looked down. She didn't say anything. It was dislike at first sight for her, but not for me. And, I went into my office with, kind of I was kind of dejected, and I was thinking, what have I done to deserve this attitude from her? And then I sat for a while, and I tried to take her perspective on the situation. She was 26, she had been working at the agency for 5 years, and she didn't go to college. I was 22, just graduated from Yale without any work experience, had my own office, and she was my secretary. So, I understood why she didn't like me, and it didn't really have to do with me personally. So, one of the things I realized was that in our little group, I was always the last priority. And I realized that she was critical to my success, and I had to win her over. So every day, I would say hello and smile, and even when she wouldn't look at me. And I would compliment the quality of her work when she did a good job, which she was really smart, and she did a good job. And I would always compliment her on her shoes. I like shoes a lot. So, I even joined the softball team from our agency, because she played on it, and I thought that maybe I could become friends with her outside of work. So one day, I finally got up the courage to ask her out for lunch. And you know what? We talked about a lot of stuff. And I told her how much I liked my new job and how much I valued her as a colleague. And then things improved a lot after that. And so, just showing that you care can do a lot. So anyway, taking her perspective really helped me develop a positive relationship. Then a few months into the job, my direct supervisor, MP, told me that she thought I was finally ready to do a client presentation based on a research study. And I said, oh, great, that's fabulous. Oh, thank you. I can't wait. But you know what? I was secretly terrified because public speaking was my biggest fear, and I was terrible at it. I would get very nervous, and when I was nervous, I just had no idea what I was saying. I really did. It could have been brilliant, but by the confused look on people's faces, I realized it was the opposite. And I knew that I couldn't hide it for long and that I had to do something about it. So the agency was offering a free, a 3-day public speaking workshop, and even though I didn't want to do it at all, I signed up. There weren't any communication classes at Yale. Yale is a liberal arts school, and so I never learned how to do it. But public speaking is so incredibly useful, and it comes in handy in so many different situations, making toasts, giving presentations at meetings, giving client presentations, everything. And it's like learning how to swim. It opens up so many new opportunities in your life. So I ended up going to this workshop, and the very first thing the instructor did was he reframed the concept of public speaking for us. And so he said, Andrea, he didn't say Andrea, I was thinking, I was thinking he was talking to me, but, he was talking to everybody. And he said, he's a really good speaker. And he said, don't think of public speaking as everybody in the audience evaluating you, what you're wearing, what you're saying, everything. Think about it as having a conversation with a bunch of people, but you're doing most of the talking. And I thought, that's very interesting. And then he said that anybody could become a public speaker, an effective public speaker, and that there's no right way or wrong way to do it. That, you got to take your strengths and build on them. So he said some people are very well organized. They break everything down in a logical way. Some people tell great stories. Some people are funny. Some people think very well on their feet. And I was thinking, I don't do any of those things. So we each did a short introduction about ourselves, and he told everybody what he thought his strength was. And he told me that my strength was that I had high levels of energy, and I showed emotion, which, I think came from being nervous and anxious, but that I should focus on that, using that to my advantage. And so that really gave me confidence. And then he broke down giving speeches into different components that we had to master before going on to the next. So, for example, one of the things that you do in public speaking, how many of you have taken public speaking classes? So a few of you, it's really great, really helpful. Even though I think it's terrible, it's no fun at all, but it's really helpful. But anyway, one of the first things you do, and you feel like an idiot, but you stand in the front and you just count and you make eye contact with everybody. So you have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you have to make, eye contact with every person in the room. So that breaks down eye contact, and then he did that. But anyway, the workshop was transformative for me and moved me from someone who hated public speaking to somebody who actually enjoyed it. So I was ready for my first client presentation, or so I thought. So my first client presentation was to present the results of a study for Amoco gasoline, where we were deciding on 3 possible spokespeople for commercials. The Chicago Bears had just won the Super Bowl. It was 1986. And William Refrigerator Perry was an offensive lineman, and it was a very popular player for the team. And so he was the spokesperson who won in our testing. And his nickname was The Fridge, was his nickname. So before I actually got to present for the client, I had 2 hoops to jump through. The first is I had to get approval by my immediate supervisor, MP, and then it went to the CEO, who was going to test me out, and then it would go to the client. So I had, 3 cracks at it. So MP and I got along fine, but we had a little tension. She was older than I was. She had a lot of experience, and she had a master's degree in advertising, and I was new and felt like I needed to prove myself. So I did a dry run of our findings at the end of the day for her approval, and then my presentation to the CEO would be the next day. So at 9 a.m. So it was the last thing we did, and I started talking about my presentation, and then there was a slide, and it said, "The winner." And then I had a picture of Refrigerator Perry, and it said, "The Fridge" on it. And I spelled fridge, F-R-I-D-G-E. Well, MP looked at it, and she said, "That's not how you spell fridge. You spell fridge, F-R-I-G. And I said, "MP, that's frig. It's not fridge." I said, "You spell fridge, F-R-I-D-G-E. And she said, "No, Andrea, you spell fridge, F-R-I-G. So change it, and I'll see you tomorrow morning." And off she went. So, here's a situation that I knew I was right. And I was thinking, okay, so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So, it's interesting. In my groups class, I often ask, so students, what would you do? So, okay, here's what I could do. I could keep it F-R-I-D-G-E. I could change it to F-R-I-G, or I could just say Refrigerator Perry, right? So that, that's not hers, that's not mine, it's compromise. So it's interesting because I ask my students this, and they never say what I did. So I changed it to F-R-I-G. And I did this because I felt that my relationship with my supervisor, which was, tension related anyway, was more important than me being correct. So I presented the findings the next morning with my FRIG, and when I got to the slide, I had the winner, there's the picture, the frig on there, right? And the CEO started laughing and laughing and laughing and said, Andrea, that's not how you spell fridge. You spell fridge, F-R-I-D-G-E. And I smiled and said, okay, I'll change it for the client tomorrow. I'll change it today for my client presentation tomorrow. So anyway, my supervisor stood up and she said, you know what, Andrea had it right, it was my fault. And she came into my office after that and she apologized. And I have to say, our relationship was so much better after that. And in fact, we lost an account, and I was the last one hired in my group, so I would be the first one to be cut. But she fought for me, and I ended up staying on the job. And so I learned a really important lesson, that when you're in a work group for a long time, being right is not the most important thing. Relationships matter more when you're going to be in them for a long period of time. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then turn it over for questions, the last lesson I learned in my first job is it's really important to do something that brings you meaning, not necessarily what's fun. So in my first job in advertising, I loved it. I had so much fun. Advertising is a great field. There is, parties, people are creative, people are funny. It's just a really fun work environment. I had a great work team. We got along great. I made a lot of friends. They're still my friends today. And you know what? I could have stayed in that career. I could have stayed in it. But, something was missing. I just didn't get fulfillment from the work. Trying to persuade consumers to buy more of our clients' products, whether they needed them or not, really, wasn't that fulfilling for me. I wanted to use research for a larger purpose and make a positive difference in others' lives. So, I went back to graduate school to become a professor and a scholar, and, I couldn't be any happier about my choice. It was a great choice, one of the best ones I've ever made. So, if you aren't fulfilled in your work, try something else. And don't wait, If it's not working, don't wait. So, I study groups. My research is on groups mainly because I didn't like being part of them growing up. But over the years, my dislike and avoidance of groups has transformed into a respect for the potential power of groups to influence broader change, improve the lives of members, accomplish things that individuals couldn't do by themselves. However, groups are complicated, and I think that, trying to understand and harness the power of groups will keep me busy in the classroom and with my research for many years to come. So anyway, I'll stop here, and thank you for listening. So questions? Anybody have any questions? They're thinking, this is one thing. Okay, so I get to talk more. See, if you don't ask questions, then I talk more. So this is one of the things that, I tell people when they have to lead discussions, is that you want to wait for a few seconds before you call on people when you're an instructor, because it takes time for people to think. It takes, a few seconds for people to think of a question. So, you want to wait. So, okay.
Let's start off here. You talk about interpersonal relationships, the importance of them, and you also work at a school of communication which has a focus on media. Do you think that the new media landscape in terms of social networking has positively or negatively impact the way our current students develop interpersonal relationships with each other?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a great question. So, I think that communication technologies and social media have done both. I think they've had positive effects, and I think that they have negative effects. So, for example, in my life, my everyday life, I feel like when I'm on, on my smartphone, that I'm not as open to different kinds of experiences. And I think if people are so focused on, social media and those kinds of things, that sometimes they miss out on some of the things that are happening around them in their physical location. But then again, people are able to connect with people who have similar interests. They're able to get in touch with people anytime when they need it. And I think that that really has powerful effects as well. If you need support, if you need help, if you need information, you can easily get in contact with somebody who can help you very quickly. So I think that they've had both positive and negative effects.
I just want to say thank you for your talk. I found it very interesting, especially the last part when you were talking about how being a good team player is more important than being right in a job setting. My question was, just going off this gentleman's question, is that I recently read an article the other day that was basically saying that they're developing an app for children to develop better interpersonal relationships because they're having difficulty doing so because they're always on like a tablet or a smartphone or something like that.
That's interesting. So they're developing an app to help it.
Exactly, yeah. So I was wondering what your take was on something like that.
It's funny that, that's an interesting question too. I've been studying groups and technology for over 20 years, and I've been studying how groups work together using technology even before the internet. And, this is really interesting. I think that these apps might be very helpful in that people can practice responding to different kinds of situations. So, but I think it doesn't substitute for the real interpersonal interaction, right? So I think it can be very helpful to practice, to learn, to get feedback, but then you really need to, go out there and apply it.
So in terms of like your own experiences, in your job field and everything like that, do you feel that these kind of lessons that you've learned will change as a result of technology in our workplace today?
Yeah. I think that these, there's some lessons that are kind of fundamental, and so I think that's a good question. But I think things like showing, respect and loyalty to people who you're working with, and I think that there are ways that you can do this using technology. So responding quickly to your colleagues, I think is really a powerful, way to show respect and loyalty. Even whenever they respond, you respond quickly. With my students, for example, I always respond within 24 hours. It's a way to show, you're important to me. So I think that there are ways that you can demonstrate some of these things through technology. There's certain norms and conventions that you can do it. But some of these lessons are just, kind of, basic in terms of framing and perspective taking and showing, valuing teamwork sort of more than, being right. And, I really think in the workplace that, your success is really dependent on other people. And so there's an interpersonal relationship that is really critical, and I think that that's important with or without technology. So thank you for your questions.
Hi, Andrea.
Hey, Kristen.
Thanks for the talk today. It was really good, and I learned a lot. I study technology in organizations and subsequently people in organizations and their use of technology as well. And I was just wondering, in thinking about the implications of what you've discussed here today, and going off of some of the comments, the relationship that children have with technology is something that I think is in our popular national discourse a lot. And, we have these tablets, but we also have, kids watching TV. And so it's been a long time that we've had this discussion of what does, cultivation theory, ideas that people develop through exposure to media over time. And I'm wondering, there's a limitation that some people are putting on their, other people's use of technology. And I don't see that happening in organizations because technology in organizations is seen as progress. Email allows you to communicate faster and over long distances. Phone calls are better than in person, whatever, because it allows a certain efficiency. But for kids, that organizational efficiency doesn't apply. And the awareness that you're talking about, getting out of your smartphone, getting out of your tablet, is something that, excuse me, we're trying to build into the way that kids experience technology. And so I'm wondering, what kinds of group dynamics do you see happening with children in media and children in technology that are different from adults in technology use?
That's a great question. And you know what? I don't have any children, and so I don't study children, and so I really can't answer that question. I'd actually like to know what you think about that. But, you know, yeah, so I really don't know. I mean, from personal experience. But, you know, from the organizational side, I think, you know, a lot of organizations are, in some situations, are actually, when they're meetings, they're actually kind of taking technology out of the meetings. I know that some people have banned using smartphones when people are, you know, engaged in a meeting because it's distracting. So, you know, I think that this issue of, you know, technology's place when people are together, I think, is an ongoing issue in organizations and also children. And you raise an important point about, you know, children are raised on this. I mean, they're, you know, I have friends who have, you know, children who are playing with iPads at age 2. So it's a different kind of thing. It's not like, you know, you're learning technology at, you know, age 25 or 30. You know, it's part of you when you grow up. And I think it's a really important question. So thanks.
About your, does it work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So about your point about the relationship, like how relationship is important than you know, being right in the groups, that reminds me of the concept groupthink. So when all the group members really care about the relationship and being cohesive with the group, then you don't really make the rational decision and then the most rightful decision. So I wonder, like, you know, whether you have any principles, like when to step up and say the truth, and then when to being with the group. Like, did you have any kind of rules or principles to decide, like, you know, what to do? Like going with the right, you know, saying the truth versus being with the group.
So that's a great question, Youngji. Thanks for it. No, that's a great question. Youngji studies groups too. That's a great question. And you know, one of the things is I usually speak up. You know, my rule is speak up, unless otherwise. And so in this situation, I felt like it didn't really matter that much because, you know, I was going to have you know, another chance to do the internal presentation, and so, you know, I knew that it would get corrected at that stage, but I wanted to demonstrate to my supervisor that my relationship to her was important. So in general, I think it's good to speak up, but if you have another goal that you think is more important, then I think it's important to go with that. So thanks. So I see these two guys standing here, so I think my time's up. So thank you very much. It was really a lot of fun.
So as a small token of our gratitude for really an extraordinary and thoughtful presentation, we offer you this journal to keep your thoughts in terms of what matters to you and why, your sketches of Mr. T, maybe it could be a dive book. So, and Timothy also has something to say.
I don't have another Mr. T coffee mug to replace that, but I do have a USC mug, so maybe you can put that one away somewhere so it doesn't get all messed up. And just another little something in here for you, and I appreciate everything you've done for me. You are truly a hero of mine. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So thank you again for being here. Thank you for a great semester. We will reconvene the series next semester. Keep a watch out for the new speaker list, and please grab some food on your way out. Good luck on the finals. Have a happy holiday season, and fight on.